My parents wanted me to drop out of college to support their lazy golden child's big dreams. When I refused, they came off financially, so I moved out and went no contact. Hi everyone, before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. All right, let's get started. Hey everyone, so I never thought I'd be the kind of person to share my personal stuff here, but after seeing how many of you open up about your stories, I figured I'd give it a shot and share mine too. I'm a 20-year-old woman in my second year of college, and somehow I found myself in this weird, messy situation with my family. It's the kind of thing you think only happens in movies, but nope, this is real life, and I'm living it. If nothing else, maybe writing it all down will help me make sense of things. All right, here's the backstory. I grew up in a smallish town where my family ran this bakery that's been around forever. I'm talking decades. It was originally started by my grandparents, and my parents took over after they retired. It's the kind of place everyone in town knows about, not because it's fancy or anything, but because it's always been there. People go for the same bread, pastries, and coffee they've been buying since they were kids. For my parents, the bakery isn't just a business, it's their whole life. They've poured everything into it. Late nights, early mornings, holidays, it doesn't matter. My mom would always say, "This bakery is the heart of our family." And my dad would go on about how it was our legacy. As a kid, I helped out here and there, mostly because I had to. I'd sweep floors, refill the pastry case, or bag up orders. Nothing too serious, but it was enough to give me an idea of how much work goes into running a place like that. My parents would talk sometimes about how they hoped one of us, me or my younger brother, would take it over one day. Here's the thing. I never really saw myself in that role. Don't get me wrong, I appreciated the bakery for what it was, but it wasn't my dream. I didn't have the same attachment to it that my parents did. I was more focused on school and figuring out my own path. Then there's Trevor, my younger brother. He's 18 now, but he's been the golden child since we were kids. You know the type. He could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. If he managed to clean his room without being asked, they'd act like he was the most responsible kid in the world. Meanwhile, I was expected to just handle everything without any fuss. Like when we were younger, I'd be the one doing most of the chores around the house while Trevor would get a pass every time. My parents would say, "Oh, he's not good at that," or "He needs more encouragement." Meanwhile, if I ever forgot to do something, I'd get a lecture about responsibility. The favoritism didn't stop there. Trevor got new gadgets for every little milestone. He passed a math test, new headphones. He got through a week of school without any issues, new video game. Me? I'd bring home good grades and maybe get a good job if I was lucky. It wasn't that I wanted stuff, it was more about how obvious the difference in treatment was. By the time I hit high school, I'd learned to just let it go. My focus was on getting into college. I worked hard, saved up what I could, and managed to get some scholarships to help cover tuition. My parents chipped in for some of it, but I also worked part-time to cover things like textbooks and groceries. When I left for college, I thought I'd finally be able to focus on myself without all the family dynamics weighing me down. And for a while, it felt like I had some breathing room. I'd come home on weekends sometimes, help out at the bakery, and then go back to campus. It wasn't perfect, but it was manageable. The thing is, every time I came home, my parents would drop little hints about the bakery. Stuff like, "It's so nice to have you here," or "You're so reliable, we don't know what we'd do without you." It was subtle, but I could tell they were planting the idea in my head. Trevor, on the other hand, was barely around. He'd pop in for an hour, maybe mess with the register or eat a croissant, and then disappear. If I ever brought up how Trevor was not really doing anything to help, my parents would immediately brush me off. "He's still young and trying to figure things out," they'd say. "He's not ready for that kind of responsibility." It didn't make sense to me, but I stopped arguing because it always ended the same way, with me feeling like I was being unreasonable for expecting him to pull his weight. Anyway, things were going fine during my second year of college. I was staying on top of my classes, working a part-time job, and feeling like I was starting to get a handle on my future. Then one weekend, I decided to go home for a visit. I figured it would be like any other visit, eat a home-cooked meal, maybe help out at the bakery for a bit, and then head back to campus. But when I got there, the whole vibe was different. My parents sat me down in the living room with this super serious energy, like they had something big to tell me. Trevor was sitting off to the side, scrolling through his phone and barely paying attention, and then they hit me with it. My mom spoke first, her voice firm. Look, we're short-staffed. Your father and I can't handle it alone, and we've decided it's time for you to step up and take your place in the family business. We want you to drop out of college. The bakery needs you. I froze for a second, trying to figure out if I'd heard her right. My dad leaned forward like he was doubling down before I even had a chance to respond. Trevor's not ready yet. He's still figuring things out. But you're reliable, responsible. You've always been the one we could count on. I didn't know what to say at first. I wasn't sure if they were expecting me to smile and say, sure, I'll just throw away everything I've been working for, or if they actually thought this was a reasonable request. Either way, I needed a second to let it sink in. Finally, I managed to ask, you want me to what? Drop out of college? My mom nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. We need someone we can trust at the bakery full-time. We can't keep running it on our own, and hiring help isn't an option right now. You could go back to school later, maybe in a few years when things are more stable. I looked at Trevor, who was sitting there with his headphones half on, scrolling through his phone. He hadn't even looked up. And what about him? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Why can't he help? My dad jumped in before my mom could answer. Trevor will help eventually, but he's still young. He hasn't figured out yet what he wants to do. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He's only 2 years younger than me, I pointed out. Why does he get time to figure things out, but I don't? Why do I have to give up everything while he just hangs out? Trevor finally looked up, smirking like this whole thing was some kind of joke. I'm not really cut out for the bakery life, he said casually. I've got bigger plans. I turned back to my parents, waiting for them to say something, anything that made sense. Instead, my mom gave me this look like she was disappointed I wasn't immediately on board. You know how much the bakery means to this family, she said. We've sacrificed so much to keep it running and provide for you. It's time for you to give back. Give back? I repeated, my voice rising a little. I've been working hard to build a future for myself. I've been paying for part of my own tuition, working part-time, keeping my grades up, and now you want me to just throw it all away because Trevor isn't ready? How is that fair? My dad's face darkened. This isn't about fairness, he said sharply. It's about family. The bakery is our legacy. Without it, we have nothing. I felt my stomach twist. Then hire someone, I said, trying to keep calm. You don't need me to do this. There are plenty of people who'd love a job. My mom shook her head. We can't afford to hire anyone right now. Things are tight. But if you come back and help, we can turn things around. We're not asking you to do this forever, just until we're back on our feet. I felt a surge of disbelief. So you expect me to drop out of college and work for you without even getting paid? How does that make any sense? I asked, my voice rising slightly. My dad's face flushed with anger. You're so selfish, he snapped. We've done everything for you, paid for your education, put food on the table, gave you a roof over your head. And now when we need you, you're turning your back on us. You think the world owes you something just because you're in college? That's when it hit me. They'd already made up their minds. This wasn't a discussion, it was an ultimatum. They weren't looking for my input, they were just waiting for me to fall in line. I'm sorry, I said, my voice trembling as I fought to steady it. But I'm not dropping out of college. I've worked too hard to get here. I'm not giving that up. My dad's expression hardened. If you don't want to be part of this family, that's your choice, he said coldly. But if you walk away now, we're done supporting you. Do not expect from us the tuition. No more rent, and no more anything. You're on your own. They knew I couldn't easily pay the rest of my college fees on my own, but I swallowed my fear. This was too big a demand to roll over and comply. I looked at my mom, hoping for some kind of reassurance, some sign that she didn't agree with him, but she just nodded. She looked disappointed. We sacrificed so much for your education already, she said. This is the least you could do in return. Trevor, of course, couldn't resist throwing in his 2 cents. Guess you're not as reliable as they thought, he said with a smirk. I ignored him. My hands were clenched into fists, and I could feel this knot in my chest that wouldn't go away. But I wasn't going to back down. I'm not dropping out, I said again, this time more firmly. The room went quiet. My dad's face was like stone, and my mom looked like she might cry. Trevor just leaned back in his chair, looking smug. Finally, my dad stood up, his voice low and steady. If you leave this house without agreeing to help, don't bother coming back, he said. I stared at him for a moment, trying to process what he just said. I stood up too. Fine, I managed to say, my voice trembling. With those words hanging in the air, I just walked out of the house. I didn't even bother saying goodbye. My dad's cold glare followed me all the way to the door, and my mom didn't say another word. I think part of me was waiting for her to call me back, to say they didn't mean it, but she didn't. The second I stepped outside, it felt like the weight of the whole conversation hit me. My heart was racing and my hands were shaking. I didn't really know where to go or what to do. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there, not after everything they just said. I ended up driving to my friend Marcus's apartment. We'd been close since high school, and he was the kind of guy you could count on when things went sideways. When I showed up at his door, he took one look at me and immediately knew something was wrong. He opened the door and stepped aside, looking concerned. I walked in, dropping my bag by the couch, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle over me. Without needing much explanation, he immediately offered his support, telling me I could stay as long as I needed. His reassurance was a small but much-needed relief in that moment. That night, I barely slept. My mind was racing with questions and worries. How was I going to pay for school without my parents' help? What about rent, groceries? And what about my stuff? Most of my things were still back at the house. I couldn't just leave everything behind. The next morning, I decided I had to go back. I wasn't planning on staying long, just enough time to grab my essentials. Marcus offered to come with me, but I told him I'd be fine. I didn't want to drag him into the mess. When I pulled into the driveway, my stomach was in knots. I felt like I didn't belong to that house anymore. I walked in without knocking because I wasn't in the mood to wait for anyone to let me in. My mom was in the kitchen, flipping through some paperwork. She looked up when she saw me, her expression a mix of surprise and disappointment. "Have you come to your senses?" she asked, setting the papers down. I ignored the question and said, "I'm just here to grab my stuff." Her face fell a little, but she didn't argue. "You know we're only doing this because we care about you," she said. I didn't respond. I just headed to my room and started packing. As I stuffed clothes into a duffel bag, my dad appeared in the doorway. He leaned against the frame, watching me like he was waiting for me to crack. I kept packing. "I don't see how staying here and giving up everything I've worked for is the better option," I said without looking at him. "You think you're too good for this family now?" he shot back. "It's not about being too good," I said, zipping up the bag. "It's about not throwing away my future because Trevor doesn't want to help while he has nothing to do." At the mention of Trevor, my dad's expression darkened even more. "Your brother needs time," he said sharply. "He's not ready for this kind of responsibility." "And I am?" I asked, turning to face him. "You're willing to let me give up everything, but he gets a free pass? How is that fair?" He didn't have an answer for that. Instead, he just shook his head and walked away, muttering something under his breath. As I was about to leave, Trevor finally made an appearance. He was coming out of his room, earphones still dangling around his neck, and gave me one of his trademark smirks. "Leaving already?" he asked. I didn't answer. I was not in the mood for his nonsense. "Well, don't let the door hit you on the way out," he said, laughing. I turned to him, my frustration boiling over. "You know this is your mess, too. Maybe if you actually stepped up for once, none of this would be happening." He rolled his eyes. "Not my problem." I didn't have the energy to argue with him. I slung my bag over my shoulder and headed for the door. My mom was waiting in the hallway, tears in her eyes. "If you leave now, don't expect us to help you anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "Remember, no tuition, no rent, nothing. You'll be on your own." "I figured as much," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. With that, I walked out. The drive back to Marcus's place was quiet, but my brain wouldn't shut up. I kept replaying the whole mess with my parents, second-guessing every word I said. Sure, I knew I made the right call by standing my ground. There was no way I was throwing away everything I'd worked for, but honestly, I was scared out of my mind. What if I couldn't keep up with rent or tuition? What if this whole thing backfired? The idea of being completely on my own for the first time felt way more real now, and it was terrifying. By the time I pulled into Marcus's driveway, I realized my hands were gripping the wheel like it was the only thing holding me together. For now, I just needed a moment to breathe and figure out what comes next. I'll keep you guys updated. Hey everyone, I thought I'd post an update since things have gotten even messier since the last time I shared. I'm still processing everything, but writing it out here helps me think straight, so thanks for reading. After leaving my parents' house with everything I could grab, I crashed at Marcus's place for the night. I didn't have a solid plan yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back. No way was I giving up my future to clean up their mess. Well, the next day, my parents wasted no time making good on their threats. When I woke up, I realized my phone line had been cut off. I couldn't call or text anyone until I got a prepaid plan set up. On top of that, my rent payment bounced because my mom had apparently canceled the auto pay. They'd been handling it. It was like they wanted to remind me at every turn that I was on my own now. It felt petty and calculated, like they were trying to make me second-guess my decision. I won't lie, it worked for a second. There was a moment where I thought, maybe it's easier to just go back and do what they want. But then I remembered the way my dad looked at me, like I'd failed him, and the way Trevor smirked as if he knew I'd eventually cave and save the day. That snapped me out of it. I scrambled to figure things out. First, I went to a nearby store and got a cheap prepaid phone plan. It wasn't great, but at least I had a way to communicate again. Then I started going through all my bank accounts and other bills to make sure my parents couldn't mess with anything else. I didn't realize how much they had access to until I started digging. It was overwhelming, but I couldn't afford to miss anything. By the end of the day, I had managed to untangle most of it. Rent, utilities, my car payment, all of it was now in my control. It felt like I was cleaning up after a storm, but at least I was making progress. The bigger issue for me at that time was money. My part-time job at the diner barely covered groceries and textbooks before all this happened. Now I had to figure out how to stretch that income to cover rent, utilities, and everything else. I talked to my manager and asked if I could pick up more shifts. He was hesitant at first since the schedule was already tight, but he eventually gave me a few extra hours. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Next, I went to the financial aid office at school. Explaining my situation to them was tough. I hated feeling like I was begging for help, but they were surprisingly understanding. The advisor I spoke to helped me apply for an emergency scholarship and a small personal loan. It wouldn't cover everything, but it eased some of the pressure. Meanwhile, my parents started blowing up my social media since they couldn't reach me by phone anymore. They sent me a barrage of messages through Facebook and Instagram. My dad's messages were short and to the point. "You're being selfish. Come back and fix this mess." My mom's were all about family and how I was tearing them apart. And then there was Trevor. He only sent one message, but it was enough to make my blood boil. "You're so stupid for not taking the easy path. You're just making your life harder for no reason." Easy path. This guy had the nerve to call it easy when he hadn't done a single thing to help the bakery. He had no idea what it was like to juggle school, work, and now all these unexpected bills. He was sitting at home doing nothing while I was out here trying to keep my head above water. To make things worse, my parents started spreading their version of events to the extended family. I found out through an aunt that my dad had been telling people I'd abandoned the bakery and left them in a tough spot. He painted me as this ungrateful kid who didn't care about the family or our legacy. My aunts and uncles on my dad's side completely bought into my parents' version of the story. They started messaging me, saying things like I needed to step up and do the right thing for the family. It was frustrating, but not surprising considering how close they are to my parents. A few cousins, though, were more skeptical and reached out to hear my side of things. I told them the truth. My parents wanted me to throw away my future so I could bail out Trevor, who wasn't even willing to lift a finger to help with the shop. Some of them believed me and said they understood, but others still seemed to think I was the selfish one, which stung more than I expected. It was exhausting. I felt like I was fighting battles on every front, financially, emotionally, and even with my own family's perception of me. I tried to stay focused on what I needed to do, but there were moments where it felt like too much. At one point, I overheard Marcus on the phone with someone explaining my situation. When he hung up, he turned to me and said, "You know, you're doing better than most people would in your shoes." I didn't feel like I was doing well at all, but hearing him say that helped a little. Over the next few days, I started piecing together a plan. I made a strict budget and cut out every unnecessary expense. No more takeout, no streaming services, nothing that wasn't essential. I started looking into other part-time jobs that might pay better or give me more hours. Even with all that, it was clear I wasn't going to make it through the semester without some serious sacrifices. Tuition was still looming over me, and while the emergency scholarship and loan helped, they didn't cover everything. My parents kept sending messages, though the tone shifted slightly. My dad's messages stayed firm and demanding, but my mom's became more desperate. She wrote things like, "Trevor isn't handling the pressure well, and we really need you to come back before it's too late." They made it sound like the bakery was on the brink of collapsing. I don't know if that was true or just another manipulation tactic, but either way, it didn't change my decision. For now, I'm holding my ground and figuring things out step by step. I'll update you all again when I've got more to share. Thanks for sticking with me through this. It means a lot. Hey guys, back with another update. Things have taken a wild turn since the last time I posted. I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of it. So, picking up where I left off last time, I was scrambling to figure out how to stay afloat after my parents completely cut me off. So far, I'd managed to sort out my rent and switch to a prepaid phone plan, and I was juggling extra shifts at the diner while trying to keep up with classes. It was rough, but I was determined to make it work. But over the past few weeks, I've been hearing more about what's going on back at the bakery, and let's just say it's not looking good. From what I've gathered through friends and people in town, the bakery is on the verge of collapsing. Apparently, my parents are struggling to keep up with everything. The shelves aren't stocked like they used to be, and customers are noticing the decline in quality. One of my friends, Chloe, who drops by the bakery occasionally, told me that the vibe there has completely shifted. My parents seem stressed all the time, snapping at each other and at customers. She said it feels like they're barely holding things together. At first, I thought it was just the natural consequence of them losing an extra pair of hands. I mean, I did a lot when I helped out, so it made sense that they'd be struggling without me. But then I started hearing whispers about some bigger issues, financial problems, unpaid invoices, and even rumors that they might be in debt. It was hard to hear, honestly. Despite everything that's happened, I don't want to see the bakery fail. It's been a part of my life for as long as I can remember, and I know how much it means to my parents. But as more details started coming to light, I realized there was a lot more going on than I initially thought. Things got really messy one day when Chloe mentioned seeing a notice posted on the bakery's door about a missed payment. She couldn't tell what it was for exactly, but it seemed serious. That got me curious, so I started digging around a little. I didn't want to ask my parents directly. No way was I opening that can of worms, but I did some snooping online and even asked a few mutual connections if they'd heard anything. Eventually, I stumbled across something that made my stomach drop. It turns out my parents had taken out a massive loan a while back, using the bakery as collateral. The loan itself wasn't entirely surprising. I mean, small businesses do that sometimes. But what caught my attention was why they did it. At first, I thought it was just to keep the bakery running. Maybe they needed extra funds to cover supplies or expand the business. But then I found out the real reason: Trevor. Apparently, my parents weren't just trying to save the bakery. They were trying to fund some big secret plan for him. From what I can piece together, Trevor had convinced them he had these big plans and a brilliant business idea. He wanted to start his own high-end gaming cafe. I don't even know how they listened to him. He had no real experience or qualifications to back it up. He just cobbled together buzzwords and flashy ideas from things he'd seen online, assuming they'd make him rich. I found out about this when I came across some documents at Chloe's place. Long story short, she has a friend who used to work with my parents, and they shared some old paperwork that got left behind. One of the documents was a loan application that mentioned Trevor's name and outlined his vision for a new business. It gets worse. The loan wasn't just tied to the bakery. They had also mortgaged part of their home to secure the funds. They were banking everything on Trevor's so-called big plans. I couldn't believe it. They were willing to risk their entire livelihood to support his dream, even though he'd never shown any real responsibility or commitment to anything. Looking back, it all started to make sense. The pressure they were putting on me to quit school and help at the bakery wasn't just about preserving the family business. It was about covering for Trevor's failure. They needed me to step in and keep the bakery running while they funneled money and resources into his project. I don't know why they didn't just tell me up front. Maybe they were embarrassed, or maybe they thought I'd refuse outright if I knew the truth. Either way, it felt like another betrayal. They were willing to throw my future under the bus to prop up Trevor, and they didn't even have the decency to be honest about it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I'd been busting my ass to make ends meet, all while they'd been bending over backward to support Trevor's pipe dream. And where's Trevor in all this? Nowhere to be found. From what I've heard, he's barely involved in the bakery anymore, and his big plans haven't gone anywhere. It's infuriating, but it also solidifies something I've been feeling for a while now. I made the right decision by walking away. If I had stayed, I would have been nothing more than a band-aid for a problem I didn't create. That said, it's not easy knowing the bakery is in such bad shape. Like I mentioned earlier, it's been a huge part of my life, and I know how much blood, sweat, and tears my parents put into it over the years. But at the same time, I can't help but feel like this is a mess they created by putting all their eggs in Trevor's basket. For now, I'm focusing on keeping myself afloat. I've managed to settle into a routine with school, work, and budgeting, but there's still a long way to go. I don't know what's going to happen with the bakery, and honestly, I don't know if my relationship with my parents can ever fully recover after this. I'll update you all again when I have more to share. Thanks for sticking with me. It means a lot. Hey again. This will probably be my last update. Things have escalated to a point where I've had to make some tough decisions, and I think it's time to finally close this chapter of my life. Thanks to everyone who's been following along and offering support. It's helped more than I can say. So, last time I mentioned finding out about the loan my parents took out and how it wasn't just to keep the bakery afloat, it was to fund Trevor's so-called big plans. That discovery alone was hard enough to process. I'd already been dealing with the fallout of being cut off and trying to piece my life together, and knowing that my parents were risking everything for Trevor while expecting me to sacrifice my future just made it worse. I hadn't spoken to my parents or Trevor directly since I left. Most of our communication had been through their guilt-laden messages on social media. But out of nowhere, my mom called me last week. She used a number I didn't recognize, probably because I'd blocked her main one, and I almost didn't answer. I wish I hadn't. She sounded tired and on the verge of tears, which threw me off right away. For a moment, I thought she was finally ready to apologize, or at least acknowledge how unfair everything had been. But no, the first words out of her mouth were, "We need you to come back." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. She went on about how the bakery was in trouble, and how Trevor's big opportunity hadn't worked out the way they'd hoped. She didn't go into much detail, but it was clear that whatever dream he'd sold them on had fallen apart. Then she hit me with, "Trevor's struggling," she said, her voice breaking. "He's not handling the pressure well. Your father and I are doing everything we can, but we can't do this without you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even after everything, they were still prioritizing Trevor's needs over mine. They weren't calling to check on me or make amends. They just wanted me to come back and clean up their mess. "Why would I do that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "You cut me off, told me I wasn't part of the family anymore, and now you expect me to come back like nothing happened?" She started crying, saying things like, "We didn't mean it," and, "You know we've always cared about you." But when I pressed her about the loan and Trevor's involvement, she got defensive. She claimed they were just trying to help him find his path, that they believed he had potential, and that sometimes you have to take risks for family. I told her that risking the bakery and their home on Trevor's pipe dream was reckless, especially when he had no real experience or track record. She didn't have much to say to that, except, "We thought it would work out." That's when my dad got on the phone. He was angry. He accused me of abandoning them and said I was being selfish for refusing to help. "This family raised you, gave you everything, and now you're turning your back on us when we need you most," he said. I snapped. "You didn't need me when you decided to mortgage the bakery for Trevor. You didn't need me when you cut off my tuition or canceled my rent payments. You only need me now because you're out of options and Trevor can't fix this mess." My dad got even angrier, saying I had no idea how hard they'd worked or how much they'd sacrificed for the bakery and for me. But at that point, I was done. "Sacrifice?" I said. "You're the ones who made the choice to risk everything for Trevor. You didn't ask me what I thought, and you didn't care what it cost me. So don't sit there and act like I owe you anything." I hung up before he could say anything else. The call left me shaken, but it also confirmed something I'd been avoiding for a while. I needed to cut them out of my life completely. Every interaction with them just reopened old wounds and reminded me of how little they valued me compared to Trevor. Speaking of Trevor, he sent me one last message after the call. It was a long rant about how I was letting the family down and how he was trying his best to make something of himself. He even tried to spin it like I was the reason his plans didn't work out, saying that if I'd stayed and helped at the bakery, things might have gone differently. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He'll never take responsibility for his actions, and I'm done wasting my energy on someone who can't even acknowledge how much damage he's caused. So here's where I'm at now. I've blocked all of them, my parents, Trevor, even the meddling relatives who keep trying to push me into doing the right thing. I've deleted them from social media, changed my phone number again, and told my close friends to ignore any messages they might get from my family. It's not an easy decision, and I know there will be days when it feels lonely, but I can't keep putting myself in situations where I'm treated like a backup plan or a scapegoat. I'm currently focusing on my studies, keeping up with work, and slowly rebuilding my confidence. It's not perfect, and it's definitely not easy, but it feels like the right path. Thanks again to everyone who's read and supported me through this journey. Your kindness and advice have meant more than you know. I'm signing off now, but if you're ever in a situation like mine, just remember, you're allowed to put yourself first. Take care, everyone.